Fuck Spurs. Oi oi people, and welcome back to another episode of the Bogan Breakdown. I'm back from the beach, here to drop a quick episode before we go into this Spurs game. Now the first thing to say about this game from an Australian perspective is that it's at 1:30 in the morning on Monday. So for those of us that work for a living, that probably means that what we're going to have to do is have a little nap, wake up, watch the game, then go back to sleep and then get up for work. So it just goes to show you the length that an international fan will go to just to be able to watch their game. Now, if it was any other game, guys, I'd probably be watching on a delay at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd wake up at 5, not look on Twitter or anything like that and just watch the game on a delay. But it's the motherfucking derby, guys, isn't it? So I will be up at 1:30. I will watch that game live. I will be on Twitter discussing it as we go. So before we get into the Spurs game, guys, I want to talk about this fucking game against Wimbledon. Now, Arsenal has a global fan base, and we're a massive club. Not only did we have more fans in the stadium for some dead game against Wimbledon in the Carabao Cup than Man City had at their last Champions League game, but we have fans lining up to buy tickets because we are a fucking huge club. Now, how the hell did Arsenal end up with a competitive game, not being televised? That is absolutely pathetic. There is absolutely no excuse for that. And for us international fans like myself, I don't want to get my violin out or anything, but I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to watch that game. I did. I woke up in the morning, spent, a long time trying to find a legitimate way to watch the game. There wasn't one. I spent time trying to find an illegitimate way to watch the game, and then I ended up watching the game off some bloke's phone footage from Twitter. That's not acceptable for Arsenal Football Club. That is pathetic, and the club have missed the trick here by not just broadcasting the game themselves through their website if no one else wanted it, and charging five quid for people to watch, because there was 10,000 people watching that game on that bloke's iPhone. So imagine how much money the club could have made if they just broadcast the game themselves. That's absolutely pathetic. They should not be a professional game for Arsenal, a professional competitive game that fans don't get to watch. It's just absolutely not acceptable. And what makes it even more fucking frustrating is that when you look at Sky Sports, and they're discussing the game, they are holding up an iPad which has a crispy image of the game. So it was being filmed. If you look at the footage from the highlights, the game was being filmed. Why wasn't it broadcast? Absolutely pathetic, and a missed opportunity by the club and by everyone else that could have got in on that opportunity and broadcast that game and made some dosh. Enough of that now though, guys. Let's get into the derby. Because this is what we all want to talk about. This happens twice a season. It's the biggest game of the year, regardless of trophies or anything like that. We always want to beat the scum, the Middlesex scum from up the road, guys. Now they are perpetually salty that we moved from Woolwich up to North London and took over town. And by far the bigger club. By far the bigger club. Even in the worst period in our history, we're still picking up trophies. These pricks have to go back over a decade to even find anything that they've won. So this derby game is always a big game. But I feel like this season is particularly big. Now, Spurs won their first 3 games. We lost our first 3. And we went into that international break and we were on a down and Spurs were flying high. But since we've come back, we've won our games. Spurs haven't won theirs. We haven't conceded. They haven't scored. So this could be a big momentum shift for us. And, it's quite early on in the season. But for me, this is a game where we have to win. We have to win. Arsene Wenger used to always talk about team spirit. And the way that he'd talk about it is, he said, you go up the stairs, but you come down the elevator. And that's true. It takes a long time to build confidence, but it goes away fucking quickly. You know? And we've had quite shaky wins over a Norwich, over a Burnley. Now, they're games that we should be winning. If we can beat this Spurs team, even if they're not the best Spurs team that we've seen in recent years, even if they're not in great form, that will be, I think, a point for our season to kick on from. And it may just take us into the top half of the table, guys, for the first time this season, which is something that we need to get done fast, because this isn't acceptable, being 12th in the league as Arsenal Football Club. It's not acceptable. And for me, you know, Spurs haven't won a game at our ground for a fucking long time. And for me, having been raised on this Arsene Wenger team that used to go to Spurs and just bully them. Just bully them. I have a lads, it's Spurs mentality. If we don't go there and bully these pricks, right? If we do not control the game, I'll be annoyed. I'll be annoyed, guys, because that is what I was raised on. And if there's one game every year that I want to see us go out and compete and bully a team, it's the North London Derby, and especially when we're at home. I don't want to see us set up all defensive and timidly. You know, I want us to bully Spurs because we're capable of it, because they are shit at the moment. They are shit. They are not better than us. And if you look at their underlying metrics, they are one of the worst teams in the league. You know, they've got some world-class players. They've definitely got some players that would walk into our team, but we are capable of bullying this Spurs side. And that is what we should be aiming to do, guys. You know, when we think back to when we won the league at White Hart Lane with that draw, you got to think of the mentality of those players, right? Thierry Henry's given interviews where he's talked about that game, and he has said that they were told beforehand, you know, you might win the game and it means you win the league, but we're concerned about safety, so don't celebrate the win or don't celebrate the draw. And all the players agreed to that. But when we kind of shit our pants in the game, Spurs got back into it and drew, and they celebrated the draw. Those players went, you know what? Fuck Spurs. I am celebrating. And that is exactly what Thierry Henry said. If we think in more recent times, that 4-2 win, was it? With the Lucas Torreira finisher, this is a big game. And I do not want to see us go out with a timid attitude, you know? In Spurs' last game, they played their midfield of Lo Celso and Ndombele, I believe, came back in, and Højbjerg. Now, they had a really good first half against Chelsea, you know? But Tuchel, being the bloody good manager that he is, at half-time, noticed what was going on, took off Mount, put on Kante, and they ran that midfield. We can run the midfield against Spurs. We should not be intimidated by Ndombele, who obviously Nuno doesn't trust, Lo Celso, who hasn't done shit since he's arrived, and Højbjerg, who Spurs called the greatest defensive midfielder in the league. He's just shit, mate. He's shit. So we should be running this game. Now, the big question from our side in terms of selection for me is, I think the back four selects itself, or the back five even. I think Ramsdale's in goal. I think we've got Tierney at left back. We've got Tomiyasu at right back. And we've got the centre-back partnership of Gabriel and White. All right? The midfield is where it starts to get interesting. And depending on what we do in the midfield, I think that determines what we do in the front, in our forwards. So the way I'm doing this, guys, is I'm playing the same midfield that we went and rinsed Burnley with. I'm playing Partey, I'm playing Odegaard, and I'm playing Smith Rowe, and I'm looking to just keep the ball and just run over Spurs. That is what I want to see from us. However, Captain Granit Xhaka is back. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter recently about how Xhaka and Partey is this amazing double pivot. I don't like the brother. I don't like him. I've seen enough. I hope that he isn't playing. And not because I think he's a bad player. He's a fine player. He has some things that he does really well. Some things that no one else in this team can replace. But there is just so much importance to me on mobility, which obviously Xhaka doesn't provide, that I would not start him in this game. If we do start him next to Partey, then the question becomes, who misses out? So you've got Smith Rowe, Saka, Pepe, Aubameyang and Odegaard. One of them is going to have to come out of the team for Xhaka to go in. Now look, Smith Rowe hasn't been in the best form. Saka hasn't been in the best form. Pepe hasn't scored. So maybe there is scope to take one of them out and put Xhaka in. But for me, I do not want to remove one of those players when it felt like we had done something against Burnley in terms of, we'd gone from not creating chances to being the final ball away from chances coming off. There was so many through passes in that Burnley game that had we made the right pass, had there been the right weight on the ball, we could have really done something against Burnley. We could have really laid into them, but it just wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. So for me, it's Partey, Odegaard, Smith Rowe in the centre of midfield, Saka and Pepe with Aubameyang up top. I think Arteta will probably bring back in Granit Xhaka because he loves Granit Xhaka. I don't know why the fuck he loves him. It's not true. I do see some characteristics that the brother has, but it's just not for me. It's not the way that I see this team evolving, and I feel like we have the opportunity now to move past him. There's another interesting question. Would you, if you don't play Xhaka, would you even play the Odegaard-Smith-Rowe partnership in midfield? We've obviously got Lokonga, who's performed well in midfield. I feel like it may be a bit early to chuck him into a North London derby. Ainsley has done all right. He's the sort of person that you would think would know what this derby means, and you'd hope that he'd be there to smash up that midfield. And obviously he's a bit more mobile than what Xhaka is. So maybe that's an option as well. But depending on what happens in that midfield, it'll determine what happens going forward. For me, guys, as I've said, this is a game that we have to win. We have to win. This is a big game for our season, even just outside of it being a derby. We need to put this third win on the board. We need to try and climb out of the bottom half of the table, and we need to get the momentum rolling. So no doubt I'll have some other short videos for you on Twitter as we go. But in summation, guys, fuck Spurs. What do we think is shit? Tottenham. What do we think of Tottenham? Shit.